Welcome to the shop, everyone, and in this video we are going to properly store a lawnmower. When I say properly, it just means that this is how I've been doing it for a long time with really good success. So I don't have my lawnmower, but I do have my friend Joe's example because he's done the season, so he's asked me to store his lawnmower for him. So this is a professional series lawnmower because that's what he does professionally. My lawnmower is just a run-of-the-mill lawnmower you'd find pretty well anywhere. The procedures I'm going to talk about step by step are going to be very similar from both. So we're going to start right now by just giving it a quick clean outside and getting rid of any of this debris. All right, so I just like to use a little bit of soapy water, or this is actually degreaser that works really well. Just give it a little bit of a soaking first to get rid of any greases or stubborn material. And then I'm just going to hose it off. I'm going to have a little brush here to get rid of some of that heavy dirt. And then once it's all dry, bring it back inside and start nice and clean. Now don't forget, after you've washed the exterior part of your lawnmower, it's also important to wash underneath here, because this is where all the magic happens, right? So you've got all sorts of stuff that can get all plugged up in here. Now, one thing I am going to have to say here, guys, there's obviously a few safety tips that I'm going to provide you with. Number one, every time you work on your lawnmower, if you want to prevent any injuries, I highly recommend that you disconnect your spark plug cap. And that's going to be also followed by, you should always wear your proper PPE. I'm not wearing any gloves right now, but I highly recommend you wear gloves and possibly even safety glasses if you're going to do this. Now, when it comes to cleaning the bottom of your lawnmower, it's highly recommended that you do it with the handle facing down. So what I mean by that is you tip it up just like this, and that's how you would clean it. Now, if you need to have somebody help you hold the handle down so that this end can stay up, that would be probably best. But the reason why I say it this way is because if you tip it on any side other than this, you stand a chance of having a hydro lock in the engine. That's just a condition where the carburetor will fill the cylinder with gasoline, and that'll just cause your engine to not run because it'll be full and you cannot compress liquids. So by having the cylinder at the highest point, that can't happen. So because this is the spark plug, we know that the cylinder's at this end, cylinder's at now at the highest point, and now we can commence doing our cleaning, and we're going to make sure this is all clean, because any of that stuff left inside can definitely cause some rotting of the cutting deck. This cutting deck happens to be aluminum, which is less prone to that. However, if you have a cutting deck that's made of steel, chances are it won't last. I'm going to show you a picture of what happens if you don't. Another way that works really well for cleaning the bottom is one of those fancy water jets that you connect. Those are really good. However, I recommend that you do it often. I mean, and by often, it should be done every time you're done cutting your lawn, because if you don't, it clogs up really quickly, and no matter what, you end up having to scrape underneath like this one. So something to keep in mind. Another trick, if you do have one of those, lower the cutting deck onto a flat surface that is, let's say, maybe if you have an asphalt driveway or interlocking stone or something like that, where it's not going to suck up anything like dirt. Lower it as low as you can, and that provides enough suction to get all of that dirt and grass out from underneath there, and gives you the best results. Next thing I like to do is I like to change the oil, because I mean, there's only about 1 liter of oil on most of these machines. It's not a lot, and it's not expensive. So I like to give myself the opportunity to have a long-lasting engine by putting some fresh oil in it. Check the manual to make sure you put the right kind of oil, right viscosity. And I also like to save myself a little bit of heartache by using one of these oil extractors. I'll put a link down in the description box to make your life easier, but you simply would put it down the dipstick hole and you would pump this up. They're a little bit different. Sometimes there's different models, and then you would start sucking the oil. You can see it coming up right now. And then you would wait until it's empty, put some fresh oil in there, and then you're good to go. After you've determined you have the correct oil level and you're good to go, you can proceed to the next step. But one thing I'd like to add on this video is these Kawasaki engines Any of the engines, doesn't matter if it's V-twin or these ones that has this style oil cap, you do not turn the cap on threads when you're checking the oil. So you wipe it clean, put it down, and then you make your measurement there. So just a little bit of a little tip and trick for today, because if you don't do that, you end up running the engine slightly low on oil, and it's not good for these Kawasaki's. So after I perform the oil change, I always like to check the air filter and replace it if needed. This one here, like I said, being that it's a professional series mower, it's got a different style air filter. This one actually looks pretty clean. Looks like it might have been done recently. But if it was all full of dirt, full of grass, or if it was wet, I would definitely replace it. And then from there, we move on to the next step. At this point, it's a good thing to make sure you put that spark plug cap back on that we talked about earlier, so that you can go and fire it up. And this is where I would take it back outside after I've done all my servicing. I would have also checked my blade at this point, make sure the blade's nice and sharp. If you want to sharpen it yourself, again, I recommend that you maybe take a look at a video for that. Make sure you got the blade balanced, that's the most important part. And then I like to add a little bit of fuel stabilizer to the tank. There's all sorts of brands out there. I'm not going to pinpoint which one because I'm not sponsored in any way. However, I would highly recommend you read the directions on the bottle to a T. Make sure you don't add too much of that stabilizer, because it actually can become harmful if you do. So once that's done, what I like to do is make sure that you run it for the next whole cycle, cut your grass maybe one last time, final cleaning, and then run the engine or the carburetor system dry. So your fuel system, run it dry. Unless you have one of these engines here with a valve where you can turn off the fuel flow, make sure that the carburetor runs out of gas, and once it's run out of gas, it's ready to store. A final thing I like to do is I like to take some penetrating oil, and I like to hit up any and all of the cables, maybe some linkages, so that throughout the winter months, nothing ends up getting corroded, nothing seizes, and it's all going to run nice in the next season when you want to fire it up. Don't forget, if you have a valve on your engine, make sure you turn it on when you go to fire it up for the next season, and it should fire up within a couple of pulls if you've done that whole procedure as I described. So really quickly, I like to wash it. I like to make sure that the undercarriage is completely washed under where the blade is. I like to bring it in, do an oil change, and then I like to run it dry. That's the most important part of servicing these for the winter time, is I like to run the engines dry of gas. That way there is nothing in the fuel system that can corrode, because now with the new fuels with ethanol is not exactly great for some smaller engines. So I hope you guys really enjoyed the video. Hope you found a little bit of educational at the very least. And thank you for watching. I will see you all in the next video.